Audience, I must speak to you. It is a matter of supreme importance. We are humans from the planet Earth, and we need your help. Well, really what it is that our sponsor needs our listeners to go to their website and buy some stuff. That's the help that they need. They need your help. And what sponsor is that? Well, it's Sparkplug Coffee, Lobsterhead. They've got something that's much better than takeout, and it's delivered to your door, if you're Canadian or American. Canadians, free shipping, ah? Convenience, affordability, we're talking about something special here. And Sparkplug really is a premium quality coffee. The best you've ever made, in fact. Go to sparkplug.coffee/HYES and find your new favorite. Then you can start brewing with the best. Oh, and join the Autopilot Coffee Club and all that because you save money and get great deals. Just FYI. One last thing. Plug that HYES promo code into the correct box and then you'll get a one-time 20% discount.
By Grabthar's hammer. What a savings.
A lot of that today. A lot of quoting. Sparkplug.coffee, that's the website. Buy some and be a great commander for your household. Very well, you've been offered up a great warm beverage, and it's not your last hope. Pedal to the metal, Bev. Let's chat about a fantastic movie.
And action! Have you ever seen
Galaxy Quest? Hello, good friends and kindly neighbors, and thank you for downloading the 626th podcast on this channel called Have You Ever Seen? Our mission is to review classic movies, and in the process, we'll spoil every little secret. I'm the very nervous crewman number 6 who's, maybe the plucky comic relief, Ryan Ellis. Plucky? And here's the arrogant captain of the National Space Exploration Administration Protector, so the NSEA Protector, and the lady who's learned how to be an actual heroic leader, my wife, Commander Bev.
That's me.
All right, the coming attractions trivia question for our movie of the day here, Galaxy Quest. There's irony in how Sam Rockwell is always whining that he's going to die in Galaxy Quest. So what is the irony of his character being so scared of dying at the end of the film?
So at the end, when Saris is on the bridge and he's killing everyone in sight, not only does Guy not die, he doesn't even take a hit. Mm-hmm. And he's just flailing around, not even trying to protect himself like he's in shock.
Mm-hmm. Everyone else dies, but not him. I didn't notice that till I read that online, and now I can't not notice it.
Here's a trivia question for you. When Nesmith hits the plunger to turn back time for 13 seconds, how back does the crew actually go?
Isn't it more like a minute?
It's like a minute 26.
But also it is slow motion.
There's slow motion, but there's at least close to 30 seconds before it even goes into slow motion.
Don't forget, it's a nerd guessing what it's for. Brandon doesn't know. No one knows, but Brandon says, it could destroy everything, but maybe it's just a matter rearranger for 13 seconds.
Crazy that they hit it. Irresponsible, dangerous criminal that they were like, it could destroy the entire universe. It's worth a shot. No, it's not. No, it's not. To save you and your friends? No.
The actors become heroes, but more importantly, the nerds save them, and they're even bigger heroes. All right, the greatest Star Trek movie of all time was released by DreamWorks 25 years ago on Christmas Day, 1999. It doubled its $45 million budget worldwide, so that's far from a big hit, but it wasn't marketed very well, and it probably shouldn't have been released at Christmas either. Even Spielberg falls asleep at the switch sometimes. Also, this movie was originally supposed to be a lot darker and R-rated. We'll talk about one of the things. Are we going to swear in this? Because
no, we shouldn't.
I got to at least somewhat quote her line, though, because clearly Sigourney Weaver is saying something other than screw in one great scene later on. But this was supposed to be a more controversial movie, but they wanted to compete with, I think it was Stuart Little that year at the box office. So in a lot of ways, it was mismarketed and changed. The movie's still great, but sometimes it's evident they were swearing on camera, but then they just looped other dialogue. All right, Bev, the movie's a quarter of a century old now, and it's just getting better. It's so good that we've seen it twice in just the past 10 months.
It's true.
My birthday, and then, I don't know, a week ago. Still, that's a long time ago, so please remind us of the doings by giving us the skinny on the movie about the Questarians.
At a convention celebrating an old popular science fiction show called Galaxy Quest, the actor who played the commander of the ship is approached by a group of aliens called Thermians who saw the show.
We need your help.
who saw the show and mistook it for reality. Having worshipped the crew, the alien race designed their society to resemble the world of Galaxy Quest and now seek help from the crew to thwart an evil race who seek to conquer them. So, a small group of actors transport to an intergalactic spacecraft to fake their way through a space battle. The gang of actors rise to the occasion, become real heroes. When they arrive home, though, they win the most elusive prize in the galaxy. Steady acting work.
Yeah, the show's back with 2 new cast members. Jane Doe. I guess that's the character's name, isn't it? Anyway, no, Jane Doe is... Yeah, that's
the actor, yeah.
She's supposed to be Jane Doe. Is her real name. I'm sure that's what they told the Guild. And one of my favorite touches in the whole movie, and I've got 1,000 favorite touches, but one of my very favorites is at the end. The guy so afraid to die is now the security chief, Rock Ingersoll. Guy Fleegman.
Tough guy.
Fleegman, too, his last name. All right, the nutshell. I meant to change this, actually. This was a placeholder, but I'll go with it anyway. Comic book guy from The Simpsons as a real-life hero, because that is one thing that Justin Long based his character on. He based him on the voice, at least, Michael J. Fox. Brandon, when the voice cracks like Michael J. Fox does in Back to the Future, for example. But also the guy who knows everything about this stuff and is, well, he's not sarcastic and mean-spirited like the comic book guy is. And something I never picked up before until this viewing is that Jason, who had missed a gig because he got drunk the night before, and then, of course, the Thermians come to him as well, he was supposed to go to Brandon's house, or at least one of their friends, to do the thing he talks about. It's just a garage, there's cardboard, and put it on screensaver 2, those kinds of things. Not what we see with the Thermians. I knew he had a gig, but it sounds like it was that gig, because you hear the kids talking about it when the two bump into each other and accidentally trade Voxes, about how he stood them up. I don't know, I didn't pick up on that before, but I didn't until this viewing. I'm kind of dumb. All right, let's get through the numbers on Galaxy Quest. The Rotten Tomatoes critics are pretty good. Very good, actually. 90% of them like it, 9-0. 118 fresh reviews, 13 rotten. The average is 7.3 out of 10, so not the best average, considering there's 90% of them that liked it. And 79% of audiences, I would have thought, if anything, those two numbers would be flipped. It's pretty low from the audiences. But then they didn't really see the movie, did they? David Mamet was quoted in the Never Surrender documentary that Fandom made of this movie. I'm a big Fandom person. I've been watching them forever. So when they were going to make a movie, they promoted it for the longest time. They got everybody except for Rickman, because he was dead, I think, anyway, in the movie to do interviews. I've seen that documentary twice. When I saw it the first time, I had to watch this right afterwards. I wasn't planning to, but I have to watch the movie now after the documentary. So they quote Mamet, who said, there are 4 perfect films: The Godfather, A Place in the Sun, Dodsworth, even A Place in the Sun's debatable, and Galaxy Quest. Just love that. So we talked about how this is, well, I think at least the best Star Trek film of all time. Certainly one of. The only Trek films with fresher reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are First Contact, the 96 movie, 93%, and Star Trek 2009, 94%. I'm not the biggest fan of that movie. I'm surprised it's that high on their list, 94%. Or that high rating.
What does Wrath of Khan have?
It didn't have as high as 90.
So many people say it's great that it sets up expectations too much. That's the only explanation for that.
Well, but it is high 80s. It's still really good.
Yeah.
The only other Dean Parisot movie, he directed this, that isn't a huge dud on Rotten Tomatoes is Bill and Ted Face the Music, 82%. Home Fries, which was before this, Fun with Dick and Jane, and Red 2 are all big splats. And that documentary by Screen Junkies, Never Surrender, Galaxy Quest documentary, is at 100%, but only 6 reviews are on the site, so not much of a sample there. Beyond the Toy Story films and this film, the only 2 fresh reviews for Tim Allen are The Santa Claus, which we'll probably review in about a month or so, and Red Belt, which Chris and I covered on Scoring the Movies years ago.
Red Belt?
It's a MMA movie. Chiwetel Ejiofor is the star of that, and Tim Allen has a relatively important supporting role. But no other fresh reviews for him other than Toy Story. Everything Toy Story, this, Santa Claus, Red Belt. This was 30th at the 1999 U.S. box office. The Sixth Sense was number 2. The Matrix was number 5. The Straight Story, which we covered not that long ago, was 147th. This opened 7th during the Christmas weekend, then went between 5th and 6th for several weeks, but it did stay in the top 10. And as I said before, it was not marketed very well. Although Tim Allen was thought of as a headlining star, I think because of the show and the Santa Claus, the Home Improvement show. And Toy Story 1 and 2, for that matter. I think 2 had come out by this point. Maybe it hadn't, I think so. But yeah, at the end of the year, it had to have come out with 6 days left in the year. So that also would have helped. And Sigourney Weaver, of course, and Rickman was a name. This was nominated for 10 Saturn Awards, and Tim Allen won the only one that they got of those nominations for Best Actor.
Really?
I think he's terrific in this movie. I'm a little bit surprised, though, because the Saturn is a pretty broad category. Many people could be... I didn't write down who was nominated against him, but there you go. Rickman and Weaver were both nominated. The movie was, and so on. All right, well, we're going to be fanboys, fangirls here for the next, 40 minutes or so of this rest of this episode. What do you think of Galaxy Quest?
I'm going to try not to be too effusive and annoying about it, but this movie's just pure joy. It's like a golden age Pixar quality screenplay. The cast is incredible. I've lost count of how many times I've seen it, and I know that doesn't even hold a candle to how many times you've seen it.
I probably see it twice a year.
Yeah, it's just this bulletproof, never-fail pick-me-up movie. You are always in a better mood when the credits roll.
Yeah, we watched this and Tropic Thunder and I forget the other one. On my birthday, we wanted to see a bunch of funny movies. I think it was a cold day and we just ordered in and pretty simple day. I think what I love about it more than anything else is that you've got all of these good actors or even great actors. Probably 10 people in this movie are funny, but who do you think is the funniest?
1, 2, 3. Sam Rockwell.
Oh, I didn't know we were doing that. I was thinking it. But, yeah, so Rockwell, definitely. But Shalhoub and Rickman.
Oh, yeah.
Weaver is hilarious on the planet.
Really is.
And then when they're going through the bowels of the ship with the, well, screw that, which she's clearly saying something else.
She has my favorite line, which is, we gotta do something before one of those things kills Guy.
Yep. That's hilarious. The hold, please, when they're up there trying to get him beamed aboard the ship. God, she's so funny. And then the kid, Justin Long, his first ever movie, he's so funny in this. If I didn't say Tim Allen.
Very first movie?
Very first movie.
Wow.
If I didn't say Tim Allen is terrific in the lead role. I love how Shatner said that he loved the movie, had a lot of fun with it, but I didn't recognize any of the actors, especially I don't know what Tim Allen was doing. I think he was trying, he has a sense of humor. People get on Shatner all the time, but I've really recognized this the last couple of years. I think he's got a better sense of humor than people think he does. He did say that the one person he recognized was the girl, I think he said, Sigourney Weaver, playing Nichelle Nichols. Which is debatable because Nichols wasn't really objectified the way that Gwen DeMarco was on the Galaxy Quest show. And one of the things I found to be a little distressing, not distressing, it's not that big a deal, but when they do the reboot show, she's still showing off cleavage like that. So not much changed in, well, that's another thing about this.
In 1999, what year was Voyager big? Because 7 of 9.
The whole thing she says about the TV Guide interview was all about her boobs and how they fit in my suit. Apparently that's based on Jerry Ryan talking to TV Guide, and it wasn't about her boobs, it was just about the...
It's about her boobs.
But anyway, how her body fit in the suit, I guess, that's all it was about. One thing that's curious about this is that they talk about how it's the 18th convention and the showing off the year in 82. This was probably, I don't know for sure, but I think this was going to get released in early 2000, maybe even spring 2000, but then they rushed it, like we said before, to get it out there to compete with other movies, including, of course, I guess, Stuart Little. So it doesn't matter that much, and I didn't pick up on it until this viewing, but it really should be a 2000 release if you have 18 conventions, and they're showing off the air in 82.
You said that when we were watching the movie, even. Put your glasses up and...
But it is funny how, screw that is... It would have been funny if she said that word, I think, if we just gotten that. But because it's so obviously dubbed, maybe it's even funnier.
If they were PG-13 and that was their single F-bomb, it would have been amazing. They should have gone for PG-13, but fine, it's a G-rated family film. I would show this to any kid of any age that can tolerate the drama in it, because it's a little intense at times.
It's PG.
It's PG, okay. But make it PG-13, put the F word in it.
You get one in a PG-13 movie. I guess that's what it is, though.
She does sell the new line reading quite passionately, and I'm sure that the first time I saw it, I laughed my head off. I still laugh every time.
But also you get Laredo really early on. You are so full of it, man. And I had to look closely when I read online about how he's saying you're full of something else that ends with it.
I would love to see the R-rated version. Another version I'd like to see is they almost cast Kevin Kline as the commander.
Right. Kevin Kline, Steve Martin, Alec Baldwin, and I think that Harold Ramis, who was going to direct this first, and apparently was all in on it, but then they wanted Tim Allen, who was obviously a pretty big name, whether you like him or not. But Ramis didn't want to work with him, I guess. I don't know exactly why. Maybe they had a bad meeting. But in any case... He
has a pretty rotten reputation. I don't know any of the details, but I think he's just kind of a bully or something.
But Ramis wanted Baldwin specifically, and he would have been funny. Steve Martin would have been funny. But the one I would have liked to have seen the most, if it's not going to be Alan, and this may be the best thing Alan's ever done, would be Kevin Kline.
Oh, can you imagine?
And then he'd be with Weaver again.
I know, from Ice Storm.
Because they were great in Dave and Ice Storm as well, yeah. But I'm not unhappy they cast him out.
No, I wouldn't change anything about this movie, but just in the world where you can see all the different potential versions, yeah, of course I'm curious about where the R rating went. I know that the R rating also would have had the relationship between, what's her name, Liliari,
that's it.
Liliari and Fred is like much more risque.
Or would have been, you mean?
Would have been, yeah. Apparently it's like a sex scene between them that's cut out.
Get a room, guys. Oh, that's not right. Rockwell's so great in this, and apparently he wasn't even going to do it. He didn't for whatever reason. Well, he had a chance to do something else.
He didn't want to do comedies.
Right. He wanted to be taken seriously. I think he also wanted to do a starring part and had a chance to do it. And I guess it was Spacey.
Yeah, they were friends.
I don't know how he knew him exactly. Okay, friend. Who told him, no, do that. Maybe Spacey read the script and saw the potential, but we said it a few minutes ago, Rockwell scores constantly. Weaver's funny in the movie, but it's really more the middle section, ironically enough, and some of the best laughs in the whole movie are in the middle section, on that planet especially. There's some great laughs there. We already highlighted them. Rickman, of course, is funny there too. Shalhoub is always funny. He and Rockwell are the ones that are the most consistently scoring laughs. But then Tim Allen does the thing that I've said 1,000 times is so hard to do. Paul Rudd in I Love You Man is the lead and probably the funniest person in the movie. Allen's not the funniest person in this movie, but he is very funny considering he's got to carry the story. But then he has that great scene when he has to apologize to Mathesar for lying. We lied. I'm so sorry. He could do dramatic acting. Of course, his voice work as Buzz Lightyear when he did dramatic stuff was effective too. So Tim Allen wasn't taken seriously, I guess, by a lot of people. Even at this point, he'd been around for about 10 years. Well, his first movie, I think, was A Santa Claus. But then the shows before that. He did stand-up comedy and everything. But he should have been taken, maybe he was taken more seriously after this movie because that's a great dramatic scene.
Well, you say that, but what great parts did he get after this? It's not like this made his career.
Red Belt's a very serious movie and a very serious role, and he's quite good at it, but nobody saw it.
Right. I don't think Tim Allen is a top-shelf actor, but you do have to give the man credit for really keenly understanding what parts work for him, because he knows what he can do, and he is pretty perfect for this part. I may not love him, but I don't think I've ever seen him poorly cast. He gets where he belongs. Whenever
I think about the Billy Crystal thing, he would have been Buzz Lightyear, but he turned them down. I don't know why, because Toy Story was, Pixar, I should say, was new. Maybe that's what it was.
No, but he had done, oh no, but that was Monsters, Inc. was
that
next.
Came later.
Right.
He apparently said, I'm not messing this up again, so then he took the role. Crystal would have been good as Buzz Lightyear, but Tim Allen is perfect for that.
Perfect. He really is. He gets the best character arc in the film. At the beginning of the film, he's this total slave to his ego. He would throw anyone under the bus to fill that hole inside himself.
I think he's drinking a lot.
He's drinking a lot.
Not just that night.
Yeah. And then he changes once he's in over his head, and he has that beautiful scene with Mathesar where he has to be honest with him. Yeah, and that's when he has the growth to start seeing the big picture, that it's about being a hero, not just feeling like a hero or looking like a hero and being treated like a hero. And once they all lift their masks off, then they can be themselves, and they really do rise to the occasion, right?
I see you got your shirt off. Well, we're still having great laughs. The end sequence, though, there's laughs there, too. Kevin McDonald as the MC.
You know this movie was shot in Canada.
Another
I always
shipmate.
have this eagle eye. There's so many great parts in this movie.
This wasn't shot in Canada.
Really? I thought it was.
It was shot in L.A. The planet scenes are Utah, apparently.
Oh.
The alien planet.
What was Kevin McDonald doing in this movie then, in a small part? I guess he just did...
Trying to make it, went to LA?
Yeah, I guess so. I thought that between him and Enrico Colantoni, whenever I see like a sprinkling of Canadian actors in a movie, I'm like, well, they must have shot this in Canada, because you're obligated to cast a certain number of Canadian actors in everything you shoot up here. When you see Colm Fiore and Molly Parker and something, then you're like, ooh, they shot this in Canada.
Right, yeah. So McDonald is the MC at the end. Another shipmate. Yes, the more the merrier. We've been saying that a lot lately. But he's funny doing the intros there. Give him a big hand, he's British. About Alexander Dane. But it's Rockwell who's the MC in the very beginning. Both funny versions of intros. But of course, Rockwell was an actor on the show a long time ago. It's funny, too, because I think that he is actually, is it younger than the actor who plays Tommy, even though Tommy was a kid and Rockwell was supposed to have been an adult 18 years ago.
Yeah, 18 years have passed, and yet Tommy does not look like he's in his 30s at all. He looks like he's like 25, so that's impossible. How old is Rockwell supposed to be if he was in the show 18 years ago, at least 18 years ago, and he looks 30 at best?
No.
How old were you when you were in the show?
Daryl Mitchell, by the way, is the name of the... He was in Home Fries for Parisot. I think he was one of the few actors Parisot had worked with before this.
And by the way, speaking of this Kevin McDonald scene where he's introducing them all, apparently in the R-rated version, that ship takes out a bunch of the fans and like beheads them and stuff.
That was going to be my nutshell, but I couldn't word it very well, so I cut it out. Great driving, Tommy. Saves their lives, but they destroy that convention hall. And how many people could they have killed? Another thing I probably should have noticed before, but when you watch a movie for the 13th time, wherever it's been, and you do it for a podcast, you maybe are more attuned to some of these things. We don't see them run into the convention hall with Brandon and his three friends, the girl, the little kid, and the taller kid. But there are at least, I think, 4 other people out there with Roman candles. So they're helping out, too, and the nerds get to be the heroes. One of my favorite sight gags of all time is in that scene. I like Justin Long in the whole movie. Oh, I see. When he's still in his room, that's funny. Mother, I cannot stress to you the commander's imperative when he's taking out the trash. That's a perfect cut. Brandon! Where are you, Brandon? Taking out the trash. But when he holds up the Vox thing, it's a little bit higher.
The ship's coming over and he says, oh, reach.
What they didn't notice, that is one of the best things he will probably ever do in his, if not the best thing Justin Long will ever do in his whole career. I don't know if he was directed to do that or if that was an improv, but that is one of my favorite things I've ever seen somebody do in a movie, just that, I'm going to hold up a little higher. But I have a question for you about that ending, because they get to be the heroes. The nerds save the day. Why does Brandon have so many Roman candles in his house? He's got an armload of those things when he goes out.
I know, that's not like a nerd thing to have. That's like a jock or a burnout thing to have. But I don't know, maybe his family's into it.
All right, dinner's at 7.
At least he's outside. That reminds me, though, it's his first film, which kind of blows my mind that he knocks it out of the park that big. It's also Rainn Wilson's first film, but he has a very small part.
Because he was doing a show at the same point. So, yes, he's on Earth, and we see him, I think, one time in the engineering.
He's also one of the away crew that go to get Jason in the first place.
I'm saying, on Earth, he's there. But when we're on the ship and doing all the adventures and stuff, he's seen once only with Tech Sergeant Jet. Otherwise, he's out of the movie because he had something else he had to do. So back to the ending, though, when the kids do save the day in the Tim Allen arc. There's, 6 cool things he gets to do. First, he gets to save the day rolling.
Yeah.
And grabbing the gun from Tom. I don't know why Tommy's got a gun in his back pocket, if you will. But using the weapon, the blaster, I guess, to kill Saris. He just vaporized that creature. Gets the standing ovation. I didn't this time, but I've teared up so many times watching this on YouTube, which I've watched the ending so many times on YouTube. When he sees the kid standing there in that, because he's basically saying, you saved our lives. We wouldn't be alive right now if it weren't for you. But then it's, come on, everybody. Oh, no, he kisses Gwen. I forgot that part.
Oh, yeah.
So that arc pays off a little bit. But then at the very end, it's, come on. So I know he's an arrogant guy and it's all about him. But when they're all done the conventions and they get the standing ovation, just typically, not this particular year, the past, he just stood there by himself and they had to be off to the side. I guess that's what... I don't
well,
think
when they're
shattered.
signing autographs, he's out on his own table.
True.
And they're at their little table.
And I like the bit there, too, when he's doing that with the one kid and talking about the show like it's real. My crew is in danger. So what'd you do? That is a great little scene, too. He really cares about the stuff until he hears them dissing him, those other two guys in the bathroom.
He cares about the energy he gets from the fans, right? That it makes him feel big, and they hero worship him, and he likes that. But by the end of the film, that's not really how he's interacting with them. Suddenly, it's about this friendship that he has with Brandon and his crew, that they saved him, that he's paying respect to them. At the beginning of the movie, everybody thinks it's lame. Everybody's a little embarrassed about what they're doing. I know that sci-fi at that point wasn't completely just for pariahs. It's come such a long way from there that it's easy to forget that if you were a fan of Star Trek in '99, it was a guilty pleasure. You were a little embarrassed to admit it. It was not something you would be proud of. I say that as a devoted Star Trek Next Generation fan. And it was not the coolest thing about me. One of the things that they learn in their journey is to not take any entertainment for granted. At the beginning, Alex is like, oh, I was Richard III, right? And then...
The three curtain calls, damn it.
Yeah, but then at the end, and when he has this beautiful relationship with the crew member, I forget his name. Quellic. And then he says that line that he said a million times.
He means it this time, too.
He means it, and he suddenly, in that moment, understands the value of what he's been doing.
Full marks to Patrick Breen as Quellic.
It is moving. And they've all come so far in their arcs at that point. And it's this beautiful acceptance that entertainment is valuable even if it's not highbrow. Snobbery is such a silly thing to apply to entertainment. If it's something you think is corny, but if it's meaningful to somebody, then who cares? And at the end, they're proud of what they do, and they're proud of the relationship that they have with their fans. When the show comes back and they get to renew these roles, what a joy, what a better relationship they're going to have to these parts and to their fans. They all will, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the Thermians themselves are this exaggerated extension of the fandom. They've taken it so literally that they've made it literally real, but all the positivity rubbed off on them too, and the never give up, never surrender. It goes beyond a corny, overused catchphrase. It's a life philosophy that they've embraced.
Almost everything out there, if not everything out there, has somebody that likes it, even if it's a terrible movie, TV show, record, whatever. And it's not like the show is terrible, it's just that it's a bit of a hack thing. When those guys are mocking the show, and Nesmith especially in the washroom, and he's hiding out. Another great moment from Tim Allen, the way his face falls. His moment with Mathazar is more powerful, but that's a pretty powerful thing too. And then he's curt with everybody and just with his autograph. And here you go, take this thing. When not even minutes before, he was so happy to talk to all of them and spend a lot of time with them too. It wasn't just, here's my signature, get away from me.
But that's the proof that it's all about him and his ego, not about his relationship with the fans.
True. But what I wanted to bring up, though, is those two guys mocking everybody. They're in a washroom with other people. You can see are dressed as Klingons. Maybe you have to assume nerdy people aren't violent, but they're lucky they didn't get their butts handed to them in that washroom for mocking these people. Oh, what a freak show. Well, you're also there, idiot.
Yeah, you're there, and they can hear you. They can see you. Although, I guess the thing is, no nerd is going to kick your ass. It's so obvious that this movie is made with a tremendous amount of love for Star Trek. You could never make this movie unless you were a fan and unless you were one of those people dressed like Klingons in the bathroom. I don't know much about the screenwriters, but it just comes through in the film so much. There's a huge amount of respect. And the characters are taking a journey from cynicism to optimism. And of all the things that make Star Trek popular and enduring, I think the most special thing about it is that it has such an idealistic, optimistic view of the universe, of the world, or at least of humanity. It allows us to picture a future where we've come close to solving all of our social problems, and that cooperation allows for space exploration, and that philosophy, those values, they come through in their approach to everything. It is such a beautiful, optimistic, reassuring view of the future, but it's a little corny too. It's very earnest, and I think that's why the stuff can seem less cool. So it's about embracing that.
They've got one woman in their cast. They've got a black guy. Quan, not his real name, is supposed to be the Asian guy.
The joke is he's got the makeup in the show.
He squints his eyes.
And he squints his eyes. God, it's so funny.
And then Rickman is playing an Englishman. Well, he's English, but he's playing an Englishman. But he's also supposed to be an alien, so he's the Spock character. So it's diverse in that way. The original Star Trek show was diverse, especially for only, maybe 6 main characters? Black woman, Asian guy.
It was diverse by 60
alien,
standards.
Yeah, well, for sure, yeah. And that we could all be peaceful as well. There's always problems and starting, you have to have drama, but the notion is it's peaceful. And then Next Generation, I don't know it as well as you do, but you've got diversity in there as well. You mentioned the writers. So David Howard, who only wrote one other film, and Robert Gordon, who didn't do that many others either. Men in Black 2 is one of those. Gordon is in that documentary, the Never Surrender documentary by Screen Junkies, or Fandom, I guess it was. So it was Howard's concept, but Gordon wrote this by himself. They didn't write it together after Mark Johnson, the producer, hired him to work on this. So they weren't co-writers in that way. This is another movie that could have been just a dream. I think Spielberg, or the studio in general, well, that is Spielberg anyway, they wanted it very clear that they were in a spaceship. That's why you see the limo get beamed up. And the dog comes into view, and then you also see the other, 5 of them get beamed up when Laliari, whatever her name is, see you on the ship, that whole thing. Then you know what happened, of course. Although you could argue that's also a dream. But anyway, he falls asleep in the limo. I'm just going to close my eyes for just a second. Keep talking. I'm hearing everything you're saying. He falls asleep and wakes up on the ship, but we saw the evidence that they were beamed up, so it can't just be a dream. Not that it needs to be, but so many movies will play with that notion, though. We've talked about it lots of times in the podcast about, is the last 20 minutes of a movie somebody's fever dream as they're dying, or is the whole thing of a movie, or most of the thing of a movie, somebody's dream? And in this case, it could have been that, but it wasn't. Because they make it very explicit that these people really are going into space. That was a hell of a thing. What's the matter with them? I don't know. By the way, before I skip over this line, I don't want to forget to say this. I love that Brandon, in his broken voice, his Michael J. Fox voice, says, I hadn't even got to the relevant conundrum. But the comic book guy, they're actually, also it's the nerds, the young nerds, Data and all those guys, or maybe even the ones that Homer's friends with. So I'm talking The Simpsons here. Homer becomes friends with those 3 nerds in college. I don't remember for sure, but one of the episodes, it's Itchy's clearly playing with Scratchy's playing a different note. He's a piano, whatever the hell, I forget exactly.
He's playing his ribcage like a xylophone.
That's right. And then he plays the same note. Hope somebody got fired for that blunder. That might be one of the college guys. Brandon's doing that. But the difference with Brandon and anything in The Simpsons, comic book guy especially, is that he's so earnest about it and sweet.
He's not being smug.
Right. That's what
he's not
comic
trying
book
to
guy
do a
is.
gotcha. Yeah.
He just wants to know, but that's wrong. Now, had he talked to him about the relevant conundrum before Jason got upset about what he heard in the bathroom from those guys mocking him, he would have tried his best to answer the questions because he was doing that with a little kid before that. That'd be interesting to see how that would go because he doesn't know the answer. But he has to have run into them enough times that he realizes that Brandon, and the other 3 kids for that matter, are geniuses about this show in a way that he could never have been because he was just an actor. He didn't take it that seriously. And yes, it was sets and plaster and cardboard
Yeah,
everywhere.
I feel like a genius would understand that it was made up by a writer, so it's not supposed to make sense. And even if you wanted answers for why something didn't line up, why would you ask the actor playing the captain and not the screenwriters?
Because the screenwriters know good at conventions.
Well, exactly.
No, what I mean is
but
they
it's
know,
like a silly notion.
but they know everything
Apparently that was a
about-
Shatner thing. Shatner would really call people out on that stuff and be like, why do you think me, an actor, would know all this technical mumbo-jumbo?
Get a life.
Get a life. A, it's made up. B, why are you asking me?
Mm-hmm. But these guys know everything about the show, and because the ship was based on the show, that's how he can fix their dilemma.
So many great touches.
Their conundrum.
Yeah, with the Thermians. It's a running gag in the joke that they really make good use of, that a lot of the stuff on the ship doesn't necessarily make sense. It's just put there because it was in the show. Famously, the
choppers.
The pounding room, the choppers, yeah.
I'm not
so
doing
good.
it. This episode was badly written.
They're creating an image to show everybody, but the image that they show everybody is them wearing these cheap costumes, these shiny, silly-looking costumes. Why would they have such silly because they watch the show, and that's how people dress in the show, because the costume department didn't have that much money, and this is just what they thought aliens looked like back then.
Right.
We haven't really talked about the Thermians that much yet. They are brilliant, and apparently a lot of the credit for that goes to Enrico Colantoni, who was the first Thermian cast. He plays Mathazar.
He came in with that voice.
He did it in the audition.
And that walk.
Yes! It's so perfect of somebody trying to speak English in a book. They can't even make those noises. They had to program something to sound like that.
Well, the key thing is they're not only not human, but they're squid-like.
Yeah. So all of those gestures, a smile, a laugh, it's extremely foreign, and they're just making... And also Enrico Colantoni, who is my TV dad. I love him so much. Ever since Veronica Mars, there's just something about him, his face when he's on screen. I am a comforted person. But it's partially because he has this vulnerability and pathos that he brings to everything, but also this stalwart steadiness at the same time.
He will be a great commander.
Yes, he will.
Yeah, Patrick Breen does a great job as Quellic, but then Jed Rees is Teb, who's the second in command, I guess. He's the one, on, Teb, on, at the end. And Missy Pyle, of course, is Laliari. I talked about one of my favorite visuals in the history of movies, but I think my favorite gag, definitely top 5 all time, is not even that, because that's funny, but that's not so much a gag. When Laredo scrapes the wall with the ship.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It comes down to one thing. The whole thing is funny. When they're all doing that head gesture, and Sigourney Weaver goes the wrong way because she's playing a dummy. But when the camera shot is facing in space and just tilts left or pans left, and that's all you need to do. Then you need to see the ship. It barely gets out of there. Everybody applauds. That's the best moment for Laredo. Rockwell beside him pointing at, get out of the way, leave me alone, let me drive the ship.
And it works so great too because it's coming after this big moment of triumph.
And the music cue is that it's a heroic thing.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, they're on the bridge of the ship and it's for real this time and they're going to launch it. Oh, it's going to feel so good. And then we as the audience are reminded, they are actors. They don't know what they're doing.
I laughed my head off the first time I ever saw this movie when that happened. And it's really coming down to that one shot as the camera goes to the left. Because he doesn't know how to drive the thing. How about Saris? Robin Sachs plays him. I guess he's based on Andrew Saris, the film critic.
He's named after Andrew Saris, who...
Because he gave Mark Johnson a bad review. I think it was The Natural. Chris and I covered that for Scoring at the Movies quite a few years ago. The Natural is one of the most famous baseball movies of all time. It has one of the great endings of all time. The music score is awesome. Redford does a good job. But we didn't love the movie. We didn't dislike it, but we were 6 out of 10 for it, maybe.
And with Andrew Saris, it's a bad movie. I haven't seen it in many years, but I recall just hating it.
I guess he could have been called Haskell, though, too, because I didn't know this. I've heard of Molly Haskell. Saris was married to her, so she could have been the villain as well. So I guess he thought it was petty, but it's just a little in-joke. Then again, he was a pretty famous critic, but it's not like it's a very unusual name. It's not like you called him Ebert. That would stand out more. I've heard of other people named Saris, I think, but never Ebert, other than Roger Ebert.
But let's talk about Saris, the character, as a villain.
It's a good villain.
Yeah. Maybe my favorite thing about him is his costume. There's puppetry involved in his costume.
Stan Winston.
There's all these moving parts to his shoulder pad things, but then also those little crab claws that come out of the top of his head.
Based on The Thing.
He's the only one that does that. The rest of those aliens, I forget what they're called, they don't have any moving parts to their costumes. But not only does it look amazing, but it's always perfectly executed. When he's angry, you know, they flare up.
Yeah, Stan Winston did the costumes for these guys. I don't know how involved he was with the Thermians and the little guys on the planet, the little aliens, and Grignak, and all the other alien effects. Maybe he did something with all of it. But anyway, one of the great makeup and effects guys of all time. And I just talked about him last week on The Terminator. Maybe the Spielberg thing. Spielberg knew him from at least Jurassic Park and probably other things and brought him in to work on this. But yeah, he looks great. He looks better than the other aliens do. The Thermians, we see them very briefly when they come in there. Rockwell does that scream. Weaver didn't know he was going to do it. That's why if you look at her, she's... Sam's screaming over there. And that reminds me, too, I believe that takes advantage of the 2:35:1 aspect ratio because 5 of them, I guess, are lined up there. And I believe she's on the far left of the screen when we face it, far right for them. And he's on the other side. But this movie has 3 aspect ratios, or at least did when they first showed it. I didn't see this in the theater. I wish I had. First, it's 4:3 because the TV show is what starts it off. Then it's 1:85:1. But when Tim Allen sees, I guess it's supposed to be Thermia.
Space. Yeah. When he's on the ship.
And you see the planet that's been mostly exploded.
Yeah.
And then he gets beamed back home, standing by his pool.
Such a great gag, too.
Then in the theater, what Parisot wanted...
He wanted the curtains to open.
Right, to be 2:35:1. Well, I guess what it would be is the valence comes down, which they don't do ever anymore. They could do it ahead of time. You watch a movie... And it doesn't matter that much, but they don't even do the valences thing when they've got time to do it ahead of time. I guess people were messing it up all the time back in 99 or early 2000, I guess, too. Because really this movie played more in 2000 than 99.
Yeah, they had too much faith in theater workers.
But 3 aspect ratios in one movie. High concept. Oh, beryllium sphere. So they have to go to the planet to get the beryllium sphere with those other aliens. And the miners, minus, not minus. I'm not following. That was a trivia question I had for you guys quite a few months ago. What is the sphere they go to on the alien planet in Galaxy Quest to get? And none of you remember what it was. But beryllium is an actual element. So they didn't make that up.
Is there air?
Well, there you go. I said I love
Some of your favorite lines, that also rudimentary lathe.
That's what I'm saying. The middle section, the whole movie's funny, but the middle section is probably my favorite as far as the lines go. And they're mostly Rockwell, but Weaver too. They all have good lines. When Rockwell's whining about going down to the ship, I'm going to die down there. You have a last name. Do I? Do I? And actually, he has not had his last name said, or he hasn't said it until Tim Allen calls him Fleegman when he's making the plan on the planet. But also the thing when Fred opens the, is there air? You don't know. Seems okay. That's hilarious. And the kills Guy thing that Weaver says. But of course, yes, when they're trying to beam Tim Allen back aboard, the pig monster gets turned inside out, and it exploded. I got it. Look around. Maybe you can find something, fashion some sort of rudimentary lathe. I don't know what my favorite line in the history of movies is as far as comedy goes and humor goes, but that's got to be in the top 2, 3, 4 at least. Rudimentary lathe. What about the plot line? It's actually a pretty good plot line, too.
Yeah.
When they all race onto the bridge of the ship at the end, plasma armor engaged. As Rickman had said on The Planet, what are you listening to Tim Allen's character for? What are you listening to Jason for? He's an actor wearing a costume. He's no more equipped to lead us than this fellow. No offense. But then whatever that is, 20 minutes later in the screen time, or maybe 30 minutes later, they're taking their proper positions. When they first went on the bridge of the ship, they thought, well, I better sit where they want me to because they're playing ball. But now it's a matter of, I'm actually going to do this thing. They all take their jobs. Tommy's learned how to drive. That's important.
One of the reviews I watched on YouTube pointed something out that's amazing. It's just 3 Amigos in space. It's the same plot as 3 Amigos.
Also A Bug's Life.
Oh, yeah?
Which was only the year before this, the Pixar film, the second Pixar film after Toy Story. They do the same thing. They hire actors, but I think the notion is they don't know that they're hiring actors. They're bugs, but they're just performers. 3 Amigos is, of course, that. And also Magnificent Seven, which we covered, I guess, just about a year ago. They're not actors, but they're hired to deal with the bad guys. So that's where all this stuff is based on, is first that. But yes, 3 Amigos in space. We're not going to get paid, that's for sure.
Would you go to space? Would you help the Thermians?
Probably. I do like, though, that when they see how serious it is, when they see that the former commander was tortured, we're out of here. And they would have gone back, because it's not like the Thermians wouldn't let them be beamed back home, but then Ceres is there and demands to talk to them, and crap gets real.
You know, considering how busy this movie is, there's a lot of plot lines going on. There's a lot of characters that have arcs that need to be resolved, and it's a complicated plot. When I was writing The Skinny, I had to leave a lot out. I just didn't really know where to focus because it's one of those movies that's impossible to summarize. And yet, it's how long? Under 2 hours, right?
Yeah, it's an hour 40-ish.
It never gets too much. It never drags. It's such a well-written script. Very economical, all things considered.
Gotten better with age. Two of my favorite comedies from that same year, this and Bowfinger, I didn't see on the big screen, and I really wish I had. If they ever come back, I should make a point of seeing them. Bowfinger I liked immediately when I saw it. I liked this, but I've liked it more. This and Big Lebowski are maybe the two best examples of a comedy that I liked fine. I liked this more than I liked Lebowski the first time I saw either of them. But I went from being a fan-ish of both of them to being a super fan of both of them. Repeat viewings helped. And it's funny because comedies don't usually get more funny. We watched The Hangover last night. We still laughed plenty. But that is a mark of a good comedy if you still can laugh. Oh, did you notice just how much they all touch each other and grab onto each other so often, especially when things get real? Grabbing arms and stuff. Weaver and Rockwell, on The Planet especially, are both grabbing onto each other. It's a very touchy-feely movie. I noticed that this time anyway. So Tim Allen, we covered him in Toy Story, the first one. We did that for the Top 100 Project when we were called that way back when, an AFI movie. And then Chris and I did do Red Belt on Scoring at the Movies. Sigourney Weaver has been nominated for 3 Oscars, but we covered her in Annie Hall, Alien, Ghostbusters, Working Girl, and Avatar. Annie Hall was a tiny cameo at the end of that movie, so it's a little disingenuous to include that one, I guess. Those nominations were for none of these movies, though, because it was Aliens, Working Girl. No, sorry, Working Girl would be the one time. Gorillas in the Mist was the other one she was nominated for.
Right, yeah.
Another person you got to put on the list of one of the great actresses of all time, certainly the modern era. It's easy to forget her because there's so many other people. Streep is so often the one people think of first, but Weaver, around the same time frame, became such a big star because of Alien, Ghostbusters, and stuff. And then she's so funny and things like this. It's not just you get probably the biggest name actor to be in this, and she's fine. She is hilarious, too.
If I was casting this movie from scratch and I had never seen it, she'd be the last person I would think of for this part. I don't think of her as like a sexy blonde, the airhead type that she's supposed to be playing, the sex symbol. She is gorgeous, don't get me wrong, but that's just not something she's ever really played up on all that much. And I wouldn't think of her as a great comedic actress. Of course, she's in Ghostbusters, but she's the straight man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, until she's the bad guy. But the way that she plays that part, excellent, but not the heavy lifter when it comes to the comedy.
For sure.
But in this one, she really is.
Mm-hmm. Alan Rickman, who died in 2016. It's been that long. Been dead for 8 years. We covered him in Die Hard and Dogma. And, of course, he's Snape in Harry Potter. And I love his villain work as the Sheriff of Nottingham, in Robin Hood 1991. It was Prince of Thieves, it was called. Mm-hmm. They were always saying that there was a sequel that they would maybe eventually do. Maybe they should never do it. It probably wouldn't be as good. Undoubtedly wouldn't be as good. But then they were saying, we're never going to do it now if Alan's dead. But apparently there is a script out there. They may eventually make it into a sequel.
Never say never. There's no part of me that really wants to see a sequel to this movie. How do you follow up a movie like this? You're just going to invite comparison and criticism.
Rockwell having any kind of confidence as the security chief, Rock Ingersoll, would not be the same character at all. And the Thermians, would they be part of it again? We have a new enemy.
You could...
Cyrus Jr.
You could bring them back, but you could also plausibly write them out completely. But it's just my instinct to protect something that's precious.
Well, especially when one of the main cast members is not alive anymore. He's one of the 3 top-billed actors. Sam Rockwell, we covered him not that long ago in Jojo Rabbit, and Chris and I covered him in The Winning Season on Scoring at the Movies, a basketball movie. You ever heard of that? Probably not.
Nope.
Yeah. He's pretty good in that, though. A person he's basing his character on, because it's a few people like Justin Long, is basing his character on a couple of different actors, but Bill Paxton in Aliens.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Game over,
Game
man!
Over, man! Yeah, that's actually perfect, yeah.
And Rockwell, of course, is an Oscar winner. He won for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, where he plays a horrible racist who does have a good redemption arc. Tony Shalhoub, who's always high and always hungry. Now, because the movie's PG, they couldn't actually have him smoking pot, but it's supposed to be that he is a big-time toker, and that's why he's always eating, and also why he's, FYI, ship's breaking up and everything.
They had to make it tongue-in-cheek, take out any obvious references, but yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And he is hilarious in this, too. He was in Men in Black, we covered that, and The Man Who Wasn't There. Daryl Mitchell, so Tommy in this, Laredo, was in Home Fries for Parisot. He does a lot of TV. I didn't see a lot else that stood out on his resume, though. Enrico Colantoni. I don't remember who he is in these movies, but he's in AI and Contagion. We've covered both of those in the past. Yeah, I don't remember who he is. Man, there's 8, 10 brilliant people in this movie, and he is so funny. Patrick Breen, who's Quellic, is in Men in Black also. and Draft Day, which I covered with Chris on Scoring at the Movies. Missy Pyle, who works constantly, she was the Nancy Grace character. They didn't call her that. And Gone Girl.
She's
but
amazing.
She's so good in that, even though I hated her because I hate Nancy Grace in reality. And also she's in Dodgeball with Justin Long, which they did 5 years after this. And a pretty good comedy there, too. Chris and I covered that on Scoring at the Movies. Robin Sachs, I don't know what he looks like because he's wearing the makeup in this movie the whole time, but he was in Jurassic Park, 2, what's it called? The Lost World. He was in that. And Ocean's 11. Long was in Dodgeball with Pyle, and I don't think we've covered him other than that. Interesting, though, looking at his resume because he's been in a lot of blockbusters, but also does a lot of horror stuff, including that stupid Tusk movie with Kevin Smith. He's worked with Kevin Smith quite a few times as well, sometimes smaller roles, but he's been in, I think, maybe 4 or something Kevin Smith movies.
Oh, well. He's one of those actors that I find perfectly charming, and I think he's a great leading man and certainly like a funny guy, but people hate him. I don't know why. It's kind of like how people hate Ryan Reynolds and Anne Hathaway. Why do we hate them?
Justin Long especially because he doesn't have the advantages that Reynolds does with his looks or even
he's cute.
Hathaway. I like him. I think he's good. What a great debut. Jed Rees, who is Teb on, was in Deadpool. Rainn Wilson's been in a lot of things. Probably his best known for is The Office. And Heidi Sweetberg, who does play Justin Long's mom, was on Seinfeld and some other things too, but she was George's fiance that dies licking toxic envelopes. I think I covered Parisot's credits already. He actually mostly does TV because it's Home Fries, this, Fun with Dick and Jane, which was a hit. That was a Jim Carrey, Téa Leoni movie. Red 2, which I think did pretty well too, the Bruce Willis and many other people movie. And then Bill and Ted 3, which was solid. I liked it. The 2 girls are better than the 2 older guys.
Yeah.
Keanu didn't look like he didn't want to be there, but he didn't really sell it either. I think Alex Winter seemed like he was more into it. I'm not saying Keanu hated it, but the 2 girls, one of them Samara Weaving, are terrific as their 2 kids.
It had a lot of nostalgia value that definitely carried it, but it was also fun and lighthearted.
During the pandemic, too.
Yeah. I remember enjoying it, but never having a meaningful desire to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, you look at the TV stuff he's done, and that's all Fresh Tomatoes. Now, maybe the show is not so much his episodes, but you look on Rotten Tomatoes, and he's got so many splats other than this, and Bill and Ted, but then a lot of fresh stuff, all fresh stuff with the TV shows. And he shared an Oscar in 1988 with Stephen Wright for Best Short Film.
Some people are as good as the material they're working with. Some people can rise to the material, but if it's not there, they can't create it.
I think Parisot is a good example.
Parisot maybe is one of those directors. Not to say that's not a gift. This movie's excellent. He's obviously a very good director, but he must need a very good script and a very good cast.
Well, look at this cast, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
We talked about the writers, Howard and Gordon, already. Mark Johnson produced it. He also produced Rain Man. We covered that. And The Natural. I talked about that. And also The Rookie. So Chris and I covered The Natural and The Rookie on Scoring the Movies. And he's also involved, or was involved, in Breaking Bad. One of the producers on that. One of the great TV shows ever. Charles Neuwirth also produced this. He produced Forrest Gump. And he produced for Levinson early in his career. And he's working with the MCU people now. Movie we saw on Blu-ray. Jerzy Zielinski shot this. He also shot Home Fries for Parisot and then Dodgeball. So we saw Pyle and Long 5 years later. The editor, Don Zimmerman, cut Coming Home, which I covered, is that this year or last year? One of the last 2 years anyway. I did Coming Home, the Oscar winner from 78. And then a lot of movies that I've covered with Chris on Scoring the Movies. Rocky 3 and 4, Over the Top. Hey, put him over the top, get your son back. And Ace Ventura as well. And we talked about the film was darker, had bad language. There was a major recut. And they rushed to get it out for Christmas. I think considering that, this movie is really well edited. The composer, David Newman, love the theme.
Like a perfect kind of representation of the Star Trek theme
and
song.
he does weave it into other things. Sometimes you hear a more mournful version of it or a slower version of it. He composed for Bowfinger that same year. So my 2 favorite comedies in 1 year, he was a composer on both of them. Also did Heathers and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. We covered those. And The Mighty Ducks and The Sandlot, which Chris and I did on Scoring at the Movies. What do you think of the look, the cutting, and the music?
The look is great. The production design is pitch perfect. Every little detail. The costumes, the seams, the way you see the seams on everything. They just really nail it. Cinematography, I can't say it stands out exactly to me. I think it's very competent.
It shouldn't look too good, actually, because they are supposed to be
true.
designing a ship, a real ship that really flies in space, based on an old crappy TV show.
It does a beautiful job of going from the banality of Earth to the majesty of space. And it's not just the aspect ratio change, but it really puts you there. I agree with you. The editing is out of this world. forget that it's just a well-edited film. When you know the backstory, that they had to turn an R-rated movie into a family-friendly PG film. And not only do they do it, but they make something this great. It calls to mind the famous story of how Annie Hall was basically rewritten in the edits.
It was a murder mystery.
Yeah, one of the best movies of all time. The last pass of the script takes place in the edit suite. Yeah. It's really true, and it's what happened to this film. So kudos. And, of course, keep the movie under an hour 43 when you have all these stories to tell and never let it get confusing or busy. Masterful work.
And a comedy.
Really well done.
Great editing, of course. Two of the funniest edits in the whole movie involved Justin Long. One is I don't know how to do it, shut down the reactor, but I know somebody who does. Cut to Brandon in his room. Oh, I see, Commander. But also the thing with the garbage.
Yeah.
Brandon, where are you? Mother, I cannot stress to you the Commander's imperative. Predicament, I believe, is the line, actually, not imperative. What happens next? Well, we know the show gets rebooted with Guy playing Security Chief Rock Ingersoll. Thus, the guy who was terrified for security is now in charge of everyone else's security.
And he's like a tough Rock Ingersoll, tough guy.
God, he's
not Guy Fleegman.
Rockwell is one of the gems of the last 25 or so years of acting. And he was in The Green Mile the same year as this. Is a really
Which is so
bad
different.
Guy.
I remember somebody telling me that and me being like, who was he in that movie? He wasn't in that movie. I think they were lying to me because he's so different between the two films that you don't recognize him.
So again, back to what happens next. The show looks like it's going to be some kind of success, maybe. Sometimes these shows do better when they come back, and everybody's obviously committed now. Look what they just experienced with each other. I'm guessing that Jason's going to be a far better leader now, even if it's just make-believe than he ever was before. Look at him sharing the stage again. He's a much better person. Yeah, it's a great arc. All right, last thoughts on the Great Galaxy Quest. Hope I got all the lines in. I don't think I did, but I got most of the best ones. Go ahead, Commander.
By Grabthar's Hammer.
What a movie.
What a movie.
So apart from raving about all the actors and how funny and good they are on this, and some of the dramatic scenes are outstanding too. But as for the story, beyond just being funny, it is exciting. The whole actors have to save the day plotline was done in Three Amigos, A Bug's Life, and other things, but I don't think anybody did it better. Magnificent Seven isn't the actors thing, but as I said, the same basic idea. I like this more than that. That set this whole tone. Well, no, Seven Samurai did, right? And that's what it was. Hiring people to help you out. This is one of the great movies because it's funny, because it has emotional moments, so many good performances, and it does tell a coherent story. But yeah, they are going to have to pay for that convention hall that they destroyed. Great driving, Tommy. Probably killed many people. He certainly could have.
Best of all, it is really funny and really heartwarming.
So that was how we saw Galaxy Quest. We'll be back in 7 days with a review of Bob Fosse's Oscar festooned All That Jazz. I didn't love another famous musical that I covered just this past Friday, and that was A Star Is Born. How will I feel about this musical? The coming attractions trivia question for All That Jazz. It's a simple yes or no. Is the song All That Jazz in the movie All That Jazz?
All right, so for the answer to that question, please check out our next podcast about All That Jazz. You already know how to find us, but let me remind you to favorite or subscribe wherever you listen, which is also where you can find our archive of hundreds of episodes that are available for free. While you're there, leave us a rating and a review. That's a great way to support us. You can find us both on Twitter. I'm at Bev Ellis Ellis, and Ryan is at MovieFiend51, or you can reach us by email. Have you ever seen podcast@gmail.com? You can also find our podcast on YouTube. Our channel is at HYES Ellis, and to enjoy freshly roasted premium coffee delivered straight to you in Canada or the US, please go to sparkplug.coffee/HYES and enjoy a 20% discount.
I give up. I surrender. Podcast is over. Need to go fashion some sort of rudimentary lathe.
And cut.